And now, we are delighted to welcome to the stage our first speaker, United Nations Resident Coordinator in Vietnam, Mr. Kamal Mahotra. Mr. Mahotra has been working with the UN Development Programme for nearly 20 years. He has been the programme's representative and the UN Resident Coordinator in both Malaysia and Turkey prior to his arrival in Vietnam at the start of this year. Please welcome Mr. Mahotra.
His Excellency, Mr. Lee Wai Chung, Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Socialist Republic of Vietnam, Dr. Chip Barder, Head of UNIS, Mr. Nguyen Van Phu, Chair of the UNIS Board of Directors, faculty and staff, students of UNIS, parents and family members, and friends from the international community. 2017 is a very special year for the United Nations in Vietnam, and I am honored to be with you today to commemorate and celebrate the 72nd anniversary of the founding of the United Nations, which was on October 24, 2017, which is known as UNA. In addition, I recently, on October 17, commemorated together with the Prime Minister, the Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister, and approximately 300 participants, including other senior government officials and ambassadors from over 40 UN member states, the 40th anniversary of Vietnam officially joining the United Nations on the 20th of September 1977. A milestone in both the country's as well as the United Nations history. UNIS in Hanoi, which is the only UN international school outside of New York, started as a project of the UN Development Programme, UNDP, in 1988, and has greatly contributed over almost 3 decades to Vietnamese society and the diplomatic and broader international community in Hanoi by bringing high-quality education to its national and international students that currently represent more than 60 different UN member states and nationalities. At a personal level, celebrating UN Day with you at UNIS also brings back fond memories of UNIS New York, which our 2 children attended. The UN Charter was originally signed by 50 leaders in 1945 and is a timeless document that represents the best values and principles of the UN and humanity. It keeps our aspirations and inspirations at the highest levels, even though in practice, UN member states have sometimes fallen short. The UN was officially born to protect and promote peace and to create a world without discrimination and inequality. Aside from world peace, the UN's role has since grown to include protecting human rights, promoting social and economic development, and providing development and humanitarian assistance around the world. The latter has often been life-saving and has been especially important in the context of famine, natural disasters, and armed conflict. It remains so. All of us should promote the 3 pillars of the UN: peace and development, and furthering human rights, all of which each one of you can help advocate with your families and friends. You are coming of age in an era where young people like yourselves have more opportunities and means to travel the world and learn about different cultures, inequalities, and other global challenges than mine and previous generations had the opportunity to do. You also have more opportunities and channels to be heard, such as through social media, and other new communication channels, such as new technologies, continue to facilitate. And so please use them actively and wisely. The UN has had a special history with Vietnam over the last 40 years. After the end of the war, different humanitarian agencies from the United Nations were amongst the first international partners on the ground to support Vietnam with the provision of humanitarian assistance, and they have since helped the country in successfully resolving some of the most severe consequences of the war, in restoring domestic production and the wider economy, and by helping the country transform from what was once an impoverished society into a modern nation. The UN and Vietnam's strong cooperation has clearly demonstrated that sometimes out of terrible adversity can come vision, hope, transformation, and a genuinely positive story, as is, to a large extent, the story of Vietnam today. The world could also be at another of those transformative junctures, although at this stage, one can be forgiven for wondering whether such a transformation will herald a positive future for you and future generations. But I am specifically referring to the UN's Agenda 2030, which, if achieved, will usher in a positive future for your and all future generations. As most of you are aware, in 2015, the 193 then UN member states, including Vietnam, adopted a global agenda for sustainable development, including 17 sustainable development goals, known as the SDGs, with leaving no one behind as their centerpiece. As UNIS students, you are guided by the UN values of peace, freedom, human dignity, justice, and respect, all elements that are at the core of the UN Sustainable Development Agenda. And you therefore understand the need for the SDGs to be fulfilled. You are the future, and you will play a big role in building the kind of world we all want to see. A world that is fair and has eradicated poverty by 2030, a world without war or conflict, and a world that values the environment and addresses the huge challenges of climate change that we currently face. Leaving no one behind also applies to youth such as yourselves. Your voice needs to be heard and will be important to help the global community combine its efforts to achieve the successful implementation of Agenda 2030. Such achievement will mean that your generation may be the first generation in world history to experience a world largely free of hunger and poverty. It will be your responsibility, sooner than you might think, to find peaceful solutions to these and other problems while respecting fundamental freedoms and the principle of equality for all. The challenge of battling extreme ideologies, climate change, celebrating and advancing multiculturalism, and protecting and ensuring the universal application of human rights are but some of the critical challenges that your generation will inherit from mine. I would like to encourage you to embrace and address these challenges in the spirit of the UN Charter and to continue your efforts in learning about the UN's principles and work and sharing them widely. On behalf of all my United Nations colleagues in Vietnam, let me wish everyone here at UNIS a memorable and happy day and year ahead, and my best wishes to all of you and your families. Sit them on.